The recording has started.
Okay, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. Time is 6 o'clock p.m. on September 2nd of 2020, and I'd like to call this meeting of the Safety Commission to order. In the interest of public health and safety and pursuant to the Governor's Executive Order N-29-20, members of the Safety Commission and staff are participating in this meeting by teleconference. In accordance with the executive order, the public may view this meeting online, but not in the council chambers. The city launched a virtual commenting portal, eComment, that allows residents to comment and participate in the meeting from their own homes. You can find the link to eComment at www.chulavistaca.gov/boards. Your comments must be received before I call for the close of the commenting period in order to be considered. After the commenting period is closed, I will announce a brief pause to allow the commissioners time to read any comments that have been received. If you have difficulty or need assistance with e-comment during the meeting, please call 619-407-3508. An engineering staff will assist you. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Montes,
Sorry, present. I'm here.
thank you. Commissioner Falvey,
Present.
Commissioner Cisco,
Present.
Commissioner Hunt,
Present.
Commissioner Mooney, Commissioner Munoz is absent. Commissioner Orso Delgado
Attending.
and Chair Marroquin is absent.
Okay. At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. So please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Public comments is the section on the agenda for members of the public to address the board on items that are not listed on the agenda. I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to comment on any final public comments. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure new comments appear. The commenting period for public comments is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read the submitted comments?
Yes. Yes.
Florence, are there any, for the record, could you announce the number of comments received?
There were no comments received via e-comment and no comments received via email.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is item number 1. It's the resolution of the Safety Committee of the City of Chula Vista approving the implementation of an all-way stop control at the intersection of Santa Victoria Road and Cala Avila, and to accordingly amend Schedule 2 of the Register of Schedules maintained in the Office of the City Engineer. Does staff have a presentation?
Yes, we do. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, great. Hopefully you can see my screen right now. As Vice Chair Fowler mentioned, this is regarding implementation of always stop control at the intersection of Santa Victoria and Calle Avila. This is the location. It's located just behind Otay Ranch High School, south of the intersection of La Media Road and Olympic Parkway, just south of Santa Venetia, if you're familiar with the area. The little inset on there shows the intersection in question. The Calle Avila Street is a private road going to the east into Villas de Avila. It's a private community. And then to the immediate west is Otay Ranch High School. So here's a close-up of the intersection. As you can see, there's a gate on the west side to Otay Ranch High School. However, during drop-off and pickup times, or I guess you could say dismissal or drop-off times, the school gates are open, and this becomes a four-way intersection. Santa Victoria in this location is varying in width from 24 to 38 feet. There are a couple curb extensions along the way that sort of delineate parking areas. And then Calle Avila is approximately 28 feet wide, which is consistent with the Otay Ranch High School driveway to the west. In this location, Santa Victoria Street has a ADT of 4,537, and the Calle Avila approach is 2,068. This location, as you can tell, has stop control on the side streets, and this action would apply stop control on the approaches on Santa Victoria. One thing to note is that there's only one currently marked crosswalk across Santa Victoria on the north side. There are crosswalks across Calle Avila and the school driveway. As you can see, they would need to be refreshed as a result of if this were to be approved. Here's a view of the intersection from street view. This is looking to the south. So Otay Ranch High School is to your right. Calle Avila is on your left. And we conducted an always stop warrant study consistent with the city council policy. And this intersection received 55 points, where a minimum of 45 would be required to deem the intersection warranting always stop control. There was one accident that was preventable by always stop, and so that received 5 points. There were a couple unique conditions warrants that brought in 14 points. The pedestrian volume was significant during the peak, which was near school dismissal time. And so it received maximum points for that, and also triggered the Caltrans pedestrian warrant. And there were 11 points for the observed traffic volume, and 5 points were applied given the difference in volume between Calle Avila and Santa Victoria. So the recommendation from staff is that Safety Commission adopt a resolution that would approve the implementation of the always stop control at that subject intersection. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Paul. So I will now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the item before the Safety Commission deliberates. As a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure any new comments appear.
Please bear with me. I am trying to bring up the public comment slide.
Okay, the commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read the submitted comments? And then if the secretary would please announce for the record the number of comments received in favor or opposed to the item.
There were no items received via e-comment, and there were no items received for this item via email.
Okay.
I just wanted to say for the record, there was a comment that did come in during this item, and I did forward that to you. It was regarding the public comments or the public hearing portion, public comments portion, I'm sorry.
Okay, was it related to any of the items on the agenda?
No.
Do we need to go back to that one, or it came in too late that we...
It came in after the 2-minute.
Okay.
It came in after the 2-minute period. So, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Okay, so all I see is it says, was the intersection just approved?
Correct. But
Okay.
but the item was for public comments.
Okay. Okay. For item number 1, do any of the commissioners want to ask any questions or comment? Commissioner Cervantes.
Yeah, Paul, I have a question. You mentioned there was one traffic collision. Did that involve a pedestrian or was it 2 vehicles?
I'm going to have to look that up really quick. I'm sorry. I'm not sure at the moment. I don't know if you'd like to ask any other questions while I find that information.
That's the only question I have.
Oh, okay. Are there any other commissioner questions in the meantime?
Okay.
Paul, if readily available, That's all right. I'll withdraw the question.
Appreciate it.
Looks like that's a question.
Yes, I have a question, Paul. What triggered the stop looking at installing a stop there? Was it complaints or the accidents, or what was it?
It was complaints, yes. We received a couple complaints from residents in the Calle Avila, the Villas de Avila community.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Do we have any other commissioner questions or comments? Seeing none, if we could have a motion.
I move to pass the resolution.
I second.
Thank you. Lawrence, did you record both our motion and our second?
Yes, the motion was made by Commissioner Heidinger,
Mm-hmm.
and then seconded Commissioner Cervantes.
Okay. So now if I could ask you to conduct a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cervantes,
Approve.
Commissioner Fowler,
Approve.
Cisco,
Approved.
Commissioner Heidinger,
Yes.
Commissioner Alberto Delgado,
Yes.
Commissioners Munoz and Chair Mardikin are absent.
Okay. So the motion passes. So now we'll move on to item number 2 on the agenda, which is resolution of the Safety Commission of the City of Chula Vista, recommending that the Chula Vista City Council increase the existing speed limit on East Lake Parkway between Olympic Parkway and Hunt Parkway from 45 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour, and that Schedule X of the register maintained in the office of the city engineer be amended to reflect these speed limits. And staff, do you have a presentation?
Yes, I do. Okay, so this is regarding East Lake Parkway. The speed limit is going to apply from Olympic Parkway to Hunt Parkway. As you can see, this involves the Otay Ranch Town Center as well as the Millennia development along this frontage, so it's relatively new roadway. The traffic survey that was conducted approximately a year ago at this point. It was consistent with the California Vehicle Code and the METCD. Just to remind you all, it is reflecting the 85th percentile speeds as determined by our traffic engineering measurements during off-peak flow. So this would be the equivalent of a free flow traffic. We also evaluated the accident records on this segment, as well as the roadside conditions that may not be apparent to the driver. To summarize the result, there were 2 observations taken along this segment. One was near Stylus and Optima Street to account for the southerly half of the segment, and the observed 85th percentile was 50. And on the northerly portion, the observed 85th percentile was 47. So this was essentially mid-block between Olympic Parkway and Birch Road. The accident rate on this segment was 0.41 accidents per million vehicle miles. The statewide average for this type of roadway is 1.36. And so therefore we will not be able to reduce the speed limit by 5 miles per hour below the prevailing speed. So the recommended speed limit is 50 miles per hour. And you may notice that the current signage is 50 miles per hour, which I'm happy to answer any questions on. But in summary, our recommendation is that the Safety Commission adopt a resolution recommending that City Council adopt the revised speed limit and that Schedule 10 of the Register of Schedules be updated accordingly. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. So I'll now call for a 2-minute pause for the public to submit any final comments on the item before the Safety Commission deliberates. Commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh your screen, the view on your screen, to ensure new comments appear. The commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read the comments?
Yes.
Okay. Secretary, would you please announce for the record the number of comments received in favor and opposed to the item?
There were no comments received.
Okay, thank you, Florence. Do the commissioners have any questions or comments for Paul on this item? Yes, Commissioner Heidinger.
Is the intersection there at the south end, now it's just a left-hand turn, but is that where Main Street is going to connect from the Otay River Valley?
Ultimately, that is the plan, yes.
Okay, so it could be quite a bit busier in that intersection than it is currently. Then.
It may be.
Commissioner Cervantes.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just have a comment, and it's kind of rather important for police enforcement. If this is proposed and it passes, that allows the police department to use radar and LiDAR, which is really, they're incredible tools for speed enforcement. If it does not pass, doesn't go through, then they have to use other means, such as visual estimates. Also, their car matching the speed, which is a lot more difficult. And then you're going to have to really rely on public or community compliance, which is kind of difficult once you got cars speeding through that section of the city. That's all I wanted to say.
Are there any other commissioner comments or questions? Paul, I don't know if you had any response. And also it looks like Commissioner. Go ahead, Commissioner.
I have a question, and my question, you were talking during the presentation and you said that currently is posted at 50 miles per hour?
That's correct. So this is sort of a exercise in the enforceability aspect that Commissioner Cervantes accurately characterized, in that back in 2011, Council passed an ordinance indicating that this was going to be established as a 45 mile per hour speed limit through this segment. For reasons that I am not aware of after doing some research, it was posted and signed as 50 miles per hour. And subsequently, that initial survey had expired. And so this effort is to basically make the posted speed limit enforceable. But like I mentioned, I'm not aware of why that occurred in the past. Though I can assure you that such mistakes don't occur now, given that we have a much more extensive work order tracking system and so forth. So hopefully that answers what I think would be your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Are there any other questions or comments? Paul, I did have one question, and you may have said this, but west of East Lake Parkway, the speed limit is 50 as well, or is it 45?
West of, along which road?
Oh, on a, let's see, the west of, so we're looking to change it from 45 to 50 between Olympic and Hunt Parkway. So just west of that, what is the speed limit before you get into this section?
It is 50, I believe. If you're referring
It is 50.
to,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, you're meaning just beyond Olympic Parkway?
Yeah.
The north end? Yes. I believe that's
Yeah,
right.
sorry, east.
Sure.
And it's also 50.
Actually, I'm incorrect. It's showing 40.
Commissioner Heidinger.
Yeah, East Lake High School is in that area right there, so I doubt that it's 50.
It's 40.
Yeah.
So we would go from 40 to 50?
Correct, which it actually does now.
Because of the posting.
Correct, yes.
Hmm. And I guess one other question, if we felt, or I guess in the future, if we wanted to take it back to 45, it just seems like there's a lot of development happening there. And so the increase of the speed limit maybe is, I don't know, maybe it's the wrong direction that we want to go. It seems like we actually want to bring the speed post back to where it should be, a 45 rather than going to 50.
Yeah, your point is well taken. Absolutely. The only challenge with that is that in the interim, the current posting wouldn't be enforceable. There wouldn't be any enforceability along this segment, essentially. So that really the only speed that they could use radar, they being the PD, would be for 65 miles per hour. But you're correct in that, as the development continues, roadway conditions change, which essentially would nullify this survey that we are approving here, if you approve it. So then we would have to revisit this entirely. I would think that the most appropriate time to do that would be closer to when Millennia is built out. That would be a substantial change. Or if any of the areas south of Hunt Parkway were to be built, then we would definitely be triggering a reevaluation of this speed limit.
Okay. So we'd have to wait for the development to occur, and then we would trigger, like it would be triggered because staff would put it on a cycle, or it would be triggered because someone would complain, and then we'd go and do a new evaluation.
More the first you mentioned. So there is a set expiration for the surveys. At base, it's 5 years. We're actually going to be discussing this a little more detail later in this agenda, but the base is 5 years, and it's valid until it is no longer representative of what is out there. So the biggest change, because we're not going to be planning to change the roadway geometry, would be the volume, and the volume would be most likely driven by, subsequent development. Right.
Okay. Commissioner Heidinger, you had a comment.
Yes, I was just going to comment that, like, since I've been a commissioner, I can only recall one speed limit that was reduced, and it was near a school. Excuse me. So that was a special case. Any other place, they never go down. So I wouldn't hold up my hopes for that. And I think Paul will be addressing that in a later agenda item, what we can do about that. But for now, we're stuck with it.
Any other commissioner comments or questions? Okay, well, seeing none, if I could have a motion on the item. Commissioner Cervantes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that East Lake Parkway between Olympic Parkway and Hunt Parkway increase from 45 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. If Florence, if we could have a roll call.
Commissioner Cervantes,
Approve.
Commissioner Faola,
Approve.
Commissioner Francisco,
Approve.
Commissioner Hayden. I didn't hear the response.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Orso Delgado
Yes.
and Commissioners Munoz and Marroquin are absent.
Okay, thank you. So with that, the motion passes. So next on the agenda is item 3, and this is a presentation on the Police Department traffic accidents and citations.
And so we don't have representation from the police department, but I will briefly summarize. Hopefully you can see. So as you can see, we have observed that traffic volumes have increased since the I guess you'd say the minimum volumes that we observed during the COVID pandemic closures. And it appears that the accidents have increased accordingly to where they're roughly normal if you were to use the prior 4 years as sort of like a representation of normal. Though a little on the lower end, which is consistent with the fact that we haven't necessarily reached consistent with prior volumes just based on our permanent count station data. So as you can imagine, more vehicle miles traveled has resulted in more accidents, unfortunately. However, accordingly, it looks like police has also increased enforcement, or the need for enforcement, given that the volume has increased. And so the way it's sort of jagged may be reflective of the pandemic, as well as record keeping or tracking lag time sort of gets reflected in this. So this data is not exactly representative of the month that is being reported. Sometimes those actual events occur prior, but that essentially summarizes what we're seeing here. And unfortunately, I can't give you any additional context for this.
Okay, thank you, Paul. So I'll now call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on the item before commission deliberation. Again, commissioners, as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure any new comments appear.
Hi, Commissioners. I just wanted to bring to your attention that Commission Chair Marroquin has joined us.
Okay. I'm sorry I'm late. I've been trying for the last quarters of an hour, just trying to figure out this thing. I just got in by luck. I really lost in this place.
Oh, good to see you, though.
Thank you, thank you. Continue sharing it. I'm sorry. I'll just stand by and watch what's going on. I'll learn from the profession. So we have some time in between.
Okay. The commenting period for this item is now closed. Have the commissioners had enough time to read the submitted comments? And Florence, would you please announce for the record the number of comments received in favor or opposed to the item?
There were no comments received.
Okay. Did the commissioners have any questions, even though I know Paul isn't the police representation tonight, but any questions or comments on the item? Okay, it looks like we have none. The next item, oh, we do. Commissioner Cervantes, sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, just real quick, back when I was working with the police department, our community in Chula Vista is really high on police traffic enforcement. And that's why I brought up on the East Lake Parkway situation where police can go down there and monitor that. Generally, it's responding to complaints or traffic collisions. But when they go out and start citing, traffic collisions go down. And I mean, as far as safety and fatalities, it's critical. Olympic Parkway is really a disaster, and that's very hard to control, but they're out there trying to enforce as much as they can. We've had a number of fatalities there, at least when I worked. Since I've retired, I don't know the exact number, but that's really critical, especially since Olympic Parkway goes near a high school, and then down the road it's going down towards the Olympic Training Center, but there's a lot of kids out in those areas. Just wanted to mention that, and that's why you see what Paul mentioned, the jaggedness is a lot of it is in response to the enforcement of the police department. So it's important that we give them those tools when we can. That's all.
Thank you, Commissioner Cervantes. Are there any other comments or? Yes, Chair Marquin.
Yes, on that same item that we're just speaking about, I think it's good to have the tools. Also, we have a large low-income housing area, which has a lot of kids using the streets for their events or looking for. And that's a wide area for the kids in the classroom. So, considering that also, definitely enforcement. They were ticketing.
I'm not sure if it's just me, but I believe the last part you were saying started to break up a bit.
But we definitely need police enforcement.
Thank you. Any other commissioner comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, and thank you, Paul, for filling in on this item for tonight. The next item on the agenda is item number 4, presentation from staff, a CIP update on pedestrian and bikeway safety programs.
I can discuss the slides, but I'll shorten things and address any questions you may have on any of the projects. And I'll just highlight a few things, updating on the construction side. The 3rd Avenue Streetscape project is on track for completion, essentially around the November timeframe, hopefully sooner, but November seems realistic at this point. The South Bay Bus Rapid Transit is very near completion, as you may have seen out there. They have completed striping, and they're doing a lot of more landscape work. Actually, I should correct, they've completed portions of the striping, and they're working on final striping on the more westerly part of the segment there. But the buses are running through the guideway, and everything is currently operating on the signals front as intended. And then the bike lanes on Broadway project is picking back up. It's actually in construction right now. They're doing the communications portion of the work, which will take about a couple months, and then they will be doing the resurfacing so that we can change all the striping and implement the road diet as well as the bike lane installation. And the current schedule is projecting that that would be complete in January. And that's all I really would like to highlight. But like I mentioned, feel free to ask me about any of the other projects.
Okay, thank you, Paul. We also have to open this item up for public comment, so I'll call for a 2-minute pause to allow the public to submit any final comments on this item before the commission deliberates or asks any questions. And as a reminder, please refresh the view on your screen to ensure any new comments appear. Okay, the commenting period for this item is now closed. I assume everyone's had again time to see the comments or lack thereof. So Florence, would you please announce for the record the number of comments received in favor or opposed to the item?
There were no comments received.
Okay, thank you. Did the commissioners have any comments or questions for Paul on either the projects that he gave a brief overview or on other ones you may have had a specific question on that are in the presentation? Okay, seeing no hands raised. All right, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, item number 5, which is selecting a representative to the Local Road Safety Plan Working Group. And is there an oral report from staff on this item?
I'd just like to briefly preface the discussion by just reminding everyone that this is the Local Road Safety Plan is a data-driven effort to evaluate all of our collision data in the last 5 years and determine whether the characteristics that would, or the factors that would contribute to a higher probability of a collision happening, so we can be a little more proactive in terms of preventing accidents on the roadway for all road users. And so as part of the effort, there's a lot of guidance out there from the Federal Highway Administration as well as Caltrans. And given that this is not necessarily a collection of what the community desires, is more of a as a kind of compendium of all the data and kind of doing a statistical analysis in terms of guiding what we prioritize in terms of safety improvements. We still would like to get the input from the community, particularly various stakeholders, and create this working group that sort of would guide the development of the plan. So the whole drafting process and all of the data would be shared with this group. You know, we can get representation from various advocates for, you know, pedestrians and bicycles and so on. And so we're currently in the process of building this group and determining availability and so forth. And we would definitely like representation from commission, though there was room for one. So we just would like a resolution, well, not necessarily a resolution, but just a determination of who would like to be the representative and who would be most available, given that we did receive interest at the prior meeting. Thanks.
Wow. Well, it looks like you have a lot of volunteers. I think this one, at least in my notes, it says we also have to open it up for public comment. So maybe before we get into deliberation and talking about who would be a representative, we'll go to that screen, Paul, and open it up for public comment.
Will do.
Okay, the commenting period for this item is now closed. Florence, could we have a record of the number of comments received via e-comment or email?
There were no comments received.
Okay, so now we can open it up for commissioner comments and questions. So Commissioner Cervantes, and then I'll go to Marcel Delgado, Heidinger, and Chair Marklin.
I had a question for Paul regarding this meeting group. What does it entail? I mean, is there a meeting, a monthly meeting? Is it quarterly, or what does it entail?
No, I appreciate you asking that. I should have mentioned it. I envision that we would have 3 meetings over the development of the plan, which would probably be a 2 to 3 month process. So it would, each meeting would probably be about an hour and a half is what we're looking at. And so it would be a kickoff meeting discussing obviously kind of what I summarized here, as well as what are the desires of the stakeholders. So this would include, you know, enforcement, emergency services and so on. And then there'd be a second meeting to go over all of the data that we have and the various statistical analyses that we've conducted, and kind of discuss what are the intended or suggested safety improvements or types of safety improvements that we should really be focusing on based on the data and the input from the group. And then the last one will sort of review the draft, is how we're looking at it.
Well, thank you for answering that. And since I have the floor and the mic, I'd like to be the first to volunteer.
Okay. Commissioner Orso Delgado, did you still have a question?
No, it was basically the same question.
Okay. Commissioner Heidinger?
Yes, my experience with these working groups is they tend to be contractor driven, and they take comments, from the working group and try to grind them into whatever template they're using at the time, and they're pretty responsive. But I also noticed that although it'd be nice, well, I think we should have a representative from the Traffic Safety Commission. It seems to me that the meetings are basically, all comers. So if we had one official representative from the Traffic Safety Commission, would it be true that others could attend as well? That's my question.
So are you saying that all would be participating, like if multiple were to be attending, or that some could observe? I'm not quite following.
Well, like my experience with the ATP is I showed up, made my comments, I took some tasks, and participated. Okay, and so even though I didn't have any official reason to be there, they seemed to welcome input from anybody who was willing to show up.
I see. So this plan is different from the active transportation plan in that, as I mentioned, it's very heavily data driven. It's not necessarily determining, where the general public feels most comfortable or less comfortable walking or biking and so on. And so it's really focused on various stakeholders. So we definitely will have representation from the public. We are coordinating currently with the school districts to try to get representatives from the high school district as well as the elementary district, the fire department, the police department, and as well as a bike advocacy or bike and pedestrian advocacy group like Circulate San Diego, for example. We are going to reach out to them. So it's not necessarily, I mean, the public would be welcome, but it's not necessarily a solicitation for input of, what would be desired in terms of how you would envision, given that we're trying to focus on trying to correct the collisions that we are seeing in the data. And so we just want to make sure that we're not doing it in a vacuum and that we are informed by the various stakeholders that are involved.
Well, let me ask. So you're just going to, from what you just said, it seems like you're just going to look up Tim's database or something like that, and just turn the crank, and out pops red flags in parts of Chula Vista. Is that a fair thing to say?
Not necessarily. There are a couple things to that. So first of all, one of your other comments I'd like to address was that we're actually doing this plan in-house, and so I'll be one of the main facilitators of the group and overseeing the development of the plan. So we can definitely have more control than it being consultant driven. However, with respect to your other question, yes, there's going to be a huge data component in terms of, yes, these are the problem spots and a heat map, if you will. But what we do and how that affects the different stakeholders will be very important. So if we had a bunch of speeding issues and somebody said, let's put speed humps everywhere, well, then fire would probably say, hey, that's going to really mess with our response times or something like that, just to give you an example. So that's where this working group would, have a major purpose in the development of the plan.
So there will be a policy aspect to it as well, then, as data.
To an extent, yes.
And I volunteer still.
And Chair Marquand, did you still have comments or questions? You're self-muted.
On?
Yes, now you're on.
Okay. I was going to say the majority of the questions have already been answered, but I was already ready to nominate Mr. Cervantes and also I think the last meeting also Mr. Munoz, Commissioner Munoz was also interested, but Cervantes will probably be the better because he knows the problems that go around the streets and the situations that have taken place before. So I vote will go for Cervantes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Paul, it looks like we could certainly make a motion for oh, okay. He just went to turn on a light. It's like, look at this. So Paul, since we do have two commissioners who are interested in being a part of this, even if we make a motion and a second for one, as Commissioner Heininger said, would you be open to having a second commissioner attend the meetings or be a part of your distribution list so that they could either be an alternate or they could just come and observe from having varied perspectives?
I think we could work with that, sure.
Okay, so should we make our motion for one and amend the motion to have, or should we make our motion for two? Everybody's saying make the motion for two. Commissioner Cervantes, you had a...
Yes, I have a quick comment for Commissioner Hittinger. He claims he's an active bicyclist, so he probably can give us a lot of input, but all my time's out there bicycling, I have yet to see him out there, so I don't know what he's wearing, but I do believe and I trust that he's out there.
You were probably traveling too fast to see me.
I should add that I'll also provide regular updates to this commission as far as how the development process goes. I should also mention that. Yeah.
Okay. So Paul, would you be, the way that your structure is set up, would it be fine if we made a motion to appoint two of the safety commissioners to the your working group?
I think it'd be great if there was a primary and an alternate. I think that would be excellent.
And I would like to move that Commissioner Cervantes be the prime or whatever you want to call him. As long as I'm on the distribution list for the meetings and you let me in, I'm fine with that.
Great. Okay. So Commissioner, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I approve what Hittinger says.
Okay. Any other commissioner comments or no? Okay, so I will make a motion then to approve and nominate Commissioner Cervantes as the primary and Commissioner Heininger as the alternate for the local road safety plan working group. If I can have a second.
Second.
Okay. Florence, I assume you got our motion and our second, and we'll do a roll call.
Who was the second on that? I didn't recognize the voice.
Jorge.
Thank you. And here's the call for the vote. Commissioner Cervantes.
Approve.
Commissioner Fowler.
Approve.
Commissioner Francisco.
I agree with both of them.
Commissioner Heidinger.
Yes.
Commissioner Orso Delgado.
Yes.
And Commissioner Marroquin.
Yes.
And Commissioner Munoz is absent.
Perfect. Thank you. And the motion passes. And Paul, you have two great volunteers. Commissioner Cervantes, you had one more, you had another comment?
No, just a question for Paul. Will you be getting a hold of me via email or how are you going to plan to get a hold of me? Let me know when the first date is going to come.
You will get emails from me, yes, as well as Commissioner Heidinger.
Thank you.
And we'll host them on WebEx like this.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, great. I hope all of your other requests go smooth and as enthusiastic, Paul, when you're putting together the rest of your working group.
We'll see.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is item 6. This is a presentation or an oral presentation from Engineering and Traffic Surveys and possible commission recommendation to City Council for Assembly Bill 2121.
Yes, thank you. And so this is just to sort of facilitate the discussion among the group. This is following up on a request initially from then Chair Heidinger regarding the 85th percentile requirement for setting speed limits and what the Safety Commission can do in terms of a recommendation or taking a stance regarding the 85th percentile rule. And I checked with our city attorney's office, and they recommended, consistent with that section of the municipal code on the screen, that the commission can make a motion to make a recommendation to city council, and that the recommendation must be made within 10 working days of when this action is taken. So if there was an action today, within 10 working days, there should be something received by city council, whether it be a letter or something to that effect. And that it must be clear that it is not an official position of the city of Chula Vista, because that would be the purview of the city council. And so before we start the discussion, I just wanted to give some highlights on what AB 2121 is trying to achieve. It does not actually change anything about the 85th percentile criterion. And please bear in mind that I'm an engineer and not a lawyer, so this is not any sort of legal interpretation, though these are sort of the things that I consider as a person who approves engineering and traffic surveys. So what AB 2121 does do is it changes when an engineering and traffic survey, or the speed survey that we use as the basis for setting a speed limit, it changes the expiration date. So for example, there are 2 conditions currently in the vehicle code that that trigger different expiration dates. If there was, just as a base at a minimum, it's 5 years. That's how long the speed survey is valid and enforceable. If the citing officer has the appropriate training and the device that the officer was using is appropriately calibrated, consistent with the vehicle code, then they can, the survey is valid for 10 years. So I'm sorry, 7 years. And so then it also would allow for, if an engineer were to determine that the roadway conditions are unchanged per the vehicle code, then it goes for 10 years. And so this is what AB 2121 is maintaining, but it adds a third criterion, which is that an engineer can determine whether the traffic collisions on that segment have increased since the prior survey. So if that were the case, if AB 2121 were to be passed, then in any case, if there are increasing traffic collisions since the prior survey, then that prior survey is valid for 10 years, regardless of any training or the device calibration or anything like that. However, if the officer was trained and the device was calibrated, as I previously mentioned, and the collisions were increased, then that survey is good for 15 years. So again, it's highlighting the fact that, as Commissioner Heidinger mentioned earlier, speeds have tended to creep upward as a result of the 85th percentile rule. This has been widely researched, and this is the latest legislation that the Assembly is evaluating in order to address that. And so, like I mentioned, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm very much simplifying and paraphrasing what is in section 40802, which is regarding what makes a speed trap a speed trap. But this is essentially the crux of what AB 2121 does. So I just wanted to inform you all of that before you make a motion as far as what the stance would be and what you recommend, because we as staff, would have no recommendation with regard to this legislation. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you. And we do also have to take a 2-minute pause to allow for public comment the public to send any final comments on the item. I'm sure there'll be some commissioner comments following that period. Okay, the commenting period for this item is now closed, and I don't believe we had any, but Florence, for the record, can you state if we received any comments via e-comment and or email?
There were no comments received.
Okay, thank you. So now I'd like to open it up, commissioners, for any comments, questions, deliberation. Commissioner Heidinger.
Yes, I'd like to give a little background about why I brought this up once upon a time. But apparently, as innocuous as this bill sounds, there's lots of opposition to it in the state of California. And I think the reason, again, I'm speaking for myself. I think the reason for it is that everybody knows this is basically a stepwise strategy to eliminate the 85th percentile laws. There is, in fact, a commission, I believe it's called the Zero Fatalities Commission, which is set up to actually figure out how to get that endpoint. And I believe the next step, or part of this bill is as well, is to set up a sort of local road thing that we were just discussing to get the data for injuries and accidents, and then also propose ways to eliminate it. Well, to anybody who has paid attention, the most obvious way is to reduce the speed limits, but you can't do that because of the 85th percentile things. I've actually done some research on this. The original research was done back in the 1960s in Ohio on country roads, where perhaps you've seen the bathtub curve, where there's a speed along here and cost of a collision like this in the bathtub. So they say, oh, where's the optimum point? And it turns out to be pretty close to 85th percentile. The problem with that strategy is that they're just counting collisions along the y-axis. Okay, if they actually counted the results of those collisions, especially deaths, you would find out that the curve would go like that. Okay, and so then you would say your optimum speed limit is as slow as you can get. Well, there are lots and lots of people in California who don't want to reduce speed limits for whatever their reasons are. You probably guess, but that's pretty much what the situation is right now.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I have a question.
Oh, okay.
For Paul, what are we going to do here? We're going to make a resolution for staff to write a resolution for the city council to put together some sort of brief to say that they're in favor of AB 2121. And in particular, I would think is since we have a lobbyist on the payroll, I believe, up in Sacramento, to put him to work to get it to happen. It's not going to happen this year. Time expired on it, like with a lot of stuff. And so it'll be next year anyways, and then years after that before we get the 85th done. But so I'm sort of asking, what's the product here?
Yes. So the way I interpreted the guidance I got from our city attorney's office is that the commission itself would develop some sort of correspondence to the city council to inform them of their recommendation if you were to make such a motion, and that and then that would be carried out, however city council would like to do with it. Staff would not be involved in terms of developing anything.
So it's on our watch to put together a recommendation. Is that what you're saying?
That is how I understand it. It would be that either you could nominate an individual amongst yourselves to draft something that we can put on the agenda for the next meeting, or some other means. But that's how I would understand it.
So it'd be like one of your resolutions that got lots of whereases, and then it would be.
Oh, no, not necessarily. It would be essentially like a letter to the city council from the safety commission that you would, I guess, move to approve at a subsequent meeting. Or I guess you could draft something now if you were to verbally draft it. I'm not quite sure how that would work, and maybe Florence might know. But if you were to make the motion now and dictate what the recommendation would be, then we can move forward with that.
Commissioner Cervantes.
Yeah, Paul, but before I vote on something like this, it sounds rather important. Maybe Flo, I would have liked to see more detailed information than the little that we got here, to be able to just understand it and then be able to make a recommendation. I'd rather wait till next month before we make a recommendation, only because I have little information on this. I like to go into the details of what it's supposed to do, what it's supposed to accomplish. It sounds good, but like Commissioner Hittinger said, maybe there's some ulterior motives also to remove certain things that we probably don't want to remove.
And Chair Marquin, I think you had a comment as well.
Yes. Yeah. No.
Chair Marquin, it looks like you're self-muted.
Better? Okay. Now, going along with what Mr. Cervantes said, it's important that if we're going to get involved in any way, shape, or form, that we know more about what are the pros and the cons of it, because if we start drafting something that we realistically don't know, it might affect our city more than it would help us. So, like Commissioner Cervantes has mentioned, before we get ourselves involved in something to that effect, and what are the consequences if we do nothing at this point? Can up and there tell us exactly if we have to do anything at this point? Can you hear me?
You cut out on the last part, but I think we heard at least maybe 2/3 or 3/4 of what you were saying. Was the last part that cut out.
In short, we don't have enough information at this point to make a right decision.
Okay. Chair Heidinger, you wanted to make another comment or follow up?
I would like to volunteer to put together a brief for our next meeting, just about what it is we're talking about here, and hopefully it'll be up to the quality of staff. But we can supply lots and lots. I can supply lots and lots of stuff, and perhaps we can do it at the meeting. I'm not sure about the ins and outs of the Brown Act, whether I can pass that stuff around or not, but
Yeah, Paul, maybe with if Chair Heidinger is, or I'm sorry, Commissioner Heidinger is volunteering to help put something together, could legal give an example of what it should be, how much detail he should put in it, so that way he's not spending a lot of time writing a lot of information or writing too little, and then it's just not enough. Then when the motion goes before City Council, they don't know what we're really asking them to do either. But maybe if there could be some staff guidance from legal given before he spends his efforts doing that. And then maybe after you respond, Commissioner Cervantes, I think you had another comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. Am I waiting for Commissioner Cervantes?
No, I was just, no, you can go ahead and respond, and then
Okay.
Commissioner Cervantes.
Sounds good. Yes, that sounds good. We can get some more legal advice, and then we could disseminate it to the whole commission, but there would not be any ability to discuss it outside of the public forum. So Commissioner Heidinger can run with that, and then I can put another. We can sort. I don't know if you could table this item, or we can just bring it back up at the next meeting as a new item, and then you can continue the discussion further at that point. And hopefully the information that's passed along would be informative enough for Commissioner Heidinger to prepare something.
Okay. Commissioner Orso Delgado?
I have, I guess, a different way of looking at this. My assumption is that the city staff prepares during any regular council meeting some sort of a brief of new legislation that can impact current city activities. And that's why city hires lobbyists to help them either support or oppose some specific legislation. In this case, Paul, I guess my question is it you as staff, and I don't want to put you on the spot if you can't, but is the city staff going to try to bring this to the attention of the council so that the commission doesn't have to do anything about it, and it would be just brought up as a natural course of events?
I'm not necessarily familiar with the process you're mentioning. That's not to say that it doesn't exist, but you know, as staff, we present facts to the various decision makers, including yourselves, with various recommendations associated with our professional opinions, if you will. With regard to the legislation updates, that may be the case. I'm not sure, but I think what I'm hearing from the group is that if I were to check back in with our legal in terms of asking them about, like you were mentioning, what the correspondence to council would look like, that's something I can check on, as well as what that process is that you're mentioning, as far as like the legislation and what the lobbyist would do with it. You're correct in that this legislation is going to be obviously considered at the state level regardless. I can't speak necessarily for what city council would want to do with that. If I think the logic behind what Commissioner Heidinger raising this item was, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Heidinger, was that if maybe Safety Commission could put its weight behind it, then it may raise the awareness of council and increase the probability of City of Chula Vista taking a stance on this legislation. So if the commission were to do nothing, that may be, council will do what it will. Otherwise, this commission can make a formal recommendation to council, and then council will still do what it will.
So this is Bill. Let me jump in just for really quick to add to what Paul said. So Pedro, I know what you're saying. We don't have a legislative affairs office that monitors and tracks the legislation like some other agencies do. That doesn't mean that we don't comment on that when we are aware of something that's of concern to us, but we don't have an office that specifically tracks all of that stuff. And this particular item, we were neutral on it, so it really came about because the commissioner brought it up and was interested in hearing about it or doing a presentation on it, and kind of the safety commission, you know, bringing it forward. So that's kind of the background of it. Yeah, we didn't have any plans to go to council specifically with our city staff recommendation one way or the other.
Got it.
Commissioner Cervantes.
So my question to Paul was, would you be able to send us the assembly bill so we could read it in detail in preparation for next month?
Definitely, yes. And along with it, I will, like I mentioned, I'll ask our city attorney's office if they have any examples or anything that could inform Commissioner Heidinger's efforts, or any further guidance from them with respect to how this proceeds. So that way, like you was suggested, that he doesn't, you know, do anything that may not come to fruition. So we'll disseminate that to the group, but again, it'll be sort of like a mass distribution, like an invite, no discussion, and then we will bring this back up at the next meeting. It sounds like, I'm sorry, I'm assuming from what I'm getting.
Yeah, it sounds like that. So we'll get information, but we're going to table this to carry it to our next Safety Commission meeting as well. And Chair, Commissioner Heidinger, you had another comment.
Yes, I was just going to point out that Paul is right in what I was thinking was that, yeah, I can just go there and say my 3 minutes in front of the city council and lobby them to do what I want them to do, just like everybody else does. And maybe it would work, maybe it wouldn't. But schemer that I am, I thought, well, you know, if we put the city traffic safety commission's imprimatur behind it, maybe we'll get better action. So there it is.
Okay. So I think once there are other commissioner comments, we'll get some information from staff, and then we'll table this and carry the item forward to our next commission meeting. Okay. And then next item on the agenda is item 7, commissioners' comments. Do we have any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Cervantes.
Do we need to make a motion to table that item for next month, or just move forward?
Oh, I don't know. Florence, do we have to, or Paul, I don't know if either of you know.
It has to get on the agenda, I would think, somehow or other.
I don't think we have to have a motion. We will add that to the next agenda. Do you agree, Paul?
Yeah, from what I can tell, we have consensus. I'm not sure specifically, but I think that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. I'm assuming we don't have to have a motion. It's just kind of part of agenda setting, is that you would add this to the agenda setting and document it. So.
Right. We will advertise on the agenda that this is continuing this item in the subsequent agenda.
Yeah, and I think it would be captured in our meeting notes. So, any other commissioner comments or questions? Okay. Yes. Yes. Okay. Chair Marquin. Just
quickly. I would like to, especially since I'm a dinosaur with the electronic stuff and all that, would it be possible that during this pandemic or whatever, you will continue to share those meetings with us, and I will participate as a participant, just to, since you have it under control, you have the equipment, and I seem to be having problems trying to get on. It's not fair to everybody. So I don't know if you would want to assist me in that.
Yeah, I certainly have no problem continuing to assist, and we can take it meeting by meeting. But Commissioner Cervantes, you also had a.
Yes, Commissioner Marroquin, you're not getting off so easy. Live down the street from me. You're welcome to come over and where you can share space on my laptop, and you can continue to chair.
There you go.
Unfortunately, I'm coming to you live from Minnesota right now, but that's what's nice about this technology. But when I return home, you're welcome to come over and we'll get set up pretty fast.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
That would be awesome. Yeah, but I think, as each meeting occurs, Florence will send out the stuff. And so if at any point you're not able to attend or you're not able to go over to Commissioner Cervantes' home as he graciously invited you to come, I'd be happy to fill in, but you just let me know as each meeting occurs.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Proper social
Also,
distancing, of course.
It's true.
Also, I wanted to add to thank everybody realistically for re-electing us, the both of us, to continue during these meetings, and really we'll try to do our best. You know that. Thank you again.
Yes, thank you all. Any other commissioner comments? Okay. Commissioner Cervantes, you look like you're leaning in and you were going to say something?
I just want to thank you, Commissioner Fowler, for doing an excellent job 2 months in a row.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, so I'll move on then to our last item of the agenda, item number 8, which is staff comments.
No comments, except thank you very much for participating and for bearing with us with this technology, the technology that we're dealing with. Also, thank you, Vice Chair Fowler, for chairing these meetings. And hopefully, when we have our staff presentations next month, it'll transition a little more smoothly. But again, thank you very much for participating, and welcome, Chair Marroquin.
Thank you, Paul, and thank you to staff. We're all transitioning to the online environment, and my watch, by the time we get it down pat and perfect, it'll be time to go back in person. Okay. Oh, Chair Marquin, you had another comment? Oh, you're self-muted.
Okay.
Oh, you're still muted.
Okay. I just want to thank our wonderful secretary for being so patient, especially with me and all of us, I assume. And that we definitely are grateful for her assistance and her communications with us.
Yes, thank you, Florence. Okay. All right, seeing that we have no more staff comments, it is now 7:29 p.m. and I'm adjourning this meeting to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Safety Commission on October 7th of 2020, also be held via teleconference. Okay.
And
I think that's it.
Say to Commissioner Cervantes, go Buckeyes.
I didn't hear that. Can you repeat?
Go Buckeyes.
Okay. All right. Right now you have the advantage. That's all right.